Outside Stuttgart, in the middle of a downpour, a truck brakes hard. A woman driving behind it slams her foot down on instinct. No thought, no calculation, just panic translated into pressure. Her BMW stops dead, straight, controlled, no skid, no scream of tires, no story to tell anyone. What she doesn't know, or what she'll never know, is that her car started stopping before she did. The instant her foot lifted off the gas a fraction too fast, the brake system read it as the opening move of a crisis, closed the gap between pad and rotor, and stood ready. By the time her foot actually landed, the outcome was already decided. 200 miles away, a different BMW, a different kind of moment. A man is stopped on the highway shoulder, hazards ticking, staring at a dashboard that just told him his engine won't go past 30. His stomach drops. This is it. The story everyone warned him about. The tow truck. The 5-figure bill. The reason his friends told him never to buy German, except that's not what's happening. His car detected something dangerous enough to destroy itself, and instead of letting that happen, it chose to cripple its own performance to get him somewhere safe. It didn't fail him. It made a decision for him in a fraction of a second that he'll spend the rest of the day misunderstanding. One driver was saved and never knew it. One driver was saved and thought he was being punished. That gap between what a BMW is actually doing and what its driver believes is happening is where the entire mythology of BMW unreliability actually lives. In the Bavarian Paradox, we asked why a car engineered this precisely could also earn a reputation for breaking hearts and emptying wallets. We found half the answer in maintenance and expectations. Today we're hunting the other half, 13 systems running right now in nearly every BMW on the road, built to work in total silence, plus one idea that ties every one of them together. Not because BMW wanted credit withheld, because silence, in this case, is the entire point. The silent copilot. Act 1. The layer underneath the dashboard. Start with the one hiding in plain sight. Inside the menus themselves, every dashboard is a compromise. A modern BMW is gathering thousands of data points every minute. Voltage curves, fuel trims, individual tire pressures, cylinder level misfire counts, and compressing nearly all of it down into a handful of simple icons a driver can register in half a second. That compression is good design. It's also a massive loss of information, most of which the owner never gets access to. Buried behind a specific button sequence at startup is Feature 1. A hidden service menu originally built for technicians that exposes that raw data directly, battery voltage in real time. Oil condition based on actual driving style, not just a mileage countdown. A running log of fault codes the dashboard light never bothered to surface. None of it urgent enough yet to trigger a warning, which is exactly the point. This is where a problem shows up while it's still cheap. Weeks or months before it becomes the kind of expensive failure that ends up in a forum post titled BMW Reliability Nightmare. It's a small, unglamorous example of a pattern that repeats across this entire list. The car already knows more than it's telling you. The only question is whether you go looking for it. It's worth pausing on why BMW would build this at all, rather than simply relying on the dealership's own diagnostic laptops. The honest answer is that a car spends the overwhelming majority of its life away from a dealership, often hundreds or thousands of miles from one, in the hands of an owner who has no formal way of checking in on it between scheduled services. Giving that owner, or any independent mechanic, direct access to the same underlying data the factory technicians rely on isn't generosity. It's a recognition that most of a car's life happens outside anyone's supervision, and the only entity actually present for all of it is the car itself. Act 2. The systems defending the brakes. If there's one system category BMW has quietly over-engineered, it's the one protecting the half second before impact. 3 separate systems are involved, stacked on top of each other, and almost none of it is visible from the driver's seat. The first, Feature 2, is brake drying. In wet conditions, the stability system applies brake pressure so light it's imperceptible, purely to wipe a film of water off the discs. Wet rotors bite slower, and that fractional delay is exactly the gap that turns a routine stop into a near miss during a storm. The The second feature 3 is brake standby and brake assist working together. The moment a driver lifts off the accelerator unusually fast, the system reads that as the leading edge of a panic stop and pre-charges the brakes, closing the gap between pad and rotor before the driver's foot even lands. If the pedal input that follows is hard and fast, brake assist recognizes the difference between a gentle stop and an emergency one and applies full boost even if the driver's own pressure isn't perfectly calibrated. The car is functionally finishing the emergency stop before the driver has consciously registered giving the order. The third feature 4 is cornering brake control, arguably the most dangerous scenario of the three because braking hard while turning puts wildly uneven load on the inside and outside wheels. Left uncorrected, that imbalance is exactly what spins a car. Cornering brake control adjusts force to each wheel individually, continuously, based on the car's actual cornering angle, keeping the vehicle stable through a maneuver that would unsettle a car without it. Individually, each of these sounds minor. Together, they represent a specific engineering answer to the same question. What happens in the 1 second where a driver's own reflexes aren't fast enough? The answer every time is that the car was already moving before the driver was. None of this shows up on a spec sheet next to horsepower figures or 0 to 60 times, because none of it is designed to be marketed. It's designed to be the reason a near miss stays a near miss on a wet road, in a country you may never visit, on a random Tuesday nobody will remember. That's a strange kind of engineering ambition, building something specifically so its success looks like nothing happened at all. Act 3. The systems protecting the powertrain. Remember the N63, the engine we tore apart last episode, the one that baked its own valve seals from the inside because BMW buried the turbos in the middle of the block. Now picture what it would take to design an engine specifically to never let that happen again. That's not hypothetical, it already exists, running quietly in millions of driveways and almost nobody's noticed. Start with feature 5, the intelligent electric water pump. Older engines ran pump speed directly off engine RPM whether the cooling demand matched or not. BMW decoupled the two entirely, so the pump can run at whatever rate the engine actually needs, spinning harder immediately after a cold start when most long-term engine wear actually happens, and continuing to circulate coolant after the engine shuts off if sensors detect residual heat in a hot turbocharger. It's a direct engineering countermeasure to precisely the kind of heat-soaked damage that plagued engines like the N63. Then there's feature 6, adaptive transmission learning. The ZF-based automatic transmissions praised in our last episode aren't running one fixed shift map. They're continuously building a private behavioral profile of the driver, adjusting shift firmness and timing based on acceleration habits, braking patterns, even traffic conditions. Two identical BMWs driven by two different people will eventually shift differently because each transmission has, in a real sense, been trained by its owner. Finally, feature 7, intelligent alternator control. A traditional alternator charges constantly, creating a small continuous drag on the engine. BMW's version times its charging specifically to deceleration and braking, moments when the engine is already slowing and that resistance is free, and backs off almost entirely under acceleration when every unit of power matters. It's a system quietly recycling energy that would otherwise be wasted, while reducing load exactly when performance is being asked for. None of this eliminates the tight tolerances and complexity we described previously. What it demonstrates is that BMW isn't unaware of the fragility their own performance philosophy creates. A significant amount of hidden engineering exists specifically to manage it. It also reframes a specific complaint we raised in the last episode. We said tight tolerances leave little room for neglect. That's still true, but it's equally true that a meaningful share of the systems on this list exist purely to buy back some of that margin, quietly compensating for the exact stresses that made engines like the N63 so unforgiving in the first place on the newer architectures that replaced it. Limits. some systems exist purely to manage risk in real time, and this is where driver panic and genuine engineering intelligence most often collide. Feature 8, Dynamic Stability Control, is the clearest example. It reads wheel speed, yaw rate, steering angle, and lateral acceleration dozens of times per second, comparing where the car is actually pointed against where the wheel says it should be. The instant the two disagree, the system breaks individual wheels and cuts power to correct the trajectory faster than any human reaction allows. Turn the system off deliberately on a closed track, and the contrast is immediate. The car becomes noticeably more willing to slide and far less forgiving of small mistakes. That gap is the invisible correction most owners never realize is running every single time they drive. Most drivers who've technically been saved by this system never register it as an event at all. There's no chime, no dashboard message announcing that a slide was caught mid-corner. There's simply a moment that should have gone wrong and didn't, filed away if it's remembered at all, as nothing more than a slightly greasy patch of road that turned out fine. Feature 9, Intelligent Auto Start-Stop, performs a similar background calculation, just less dramatically. Before allowing the engine to shut off at a stop, the system checks battery state, cabin temperature demand, engine temperature, even incline steepness. If any condition isn't met, it silently declines to stop the engine. No alert, no explanation, just a judgment call re-evaluated at every single stop, prioritizing mechanical health and driver comfort over the fuel savings in that specific moment. And then there's Feature 10, Limp Home Mode, the single feature most responsible for owner panic, and most misunderstood as a symptom of BMW's unreliability rather than a defense against it. When the control unit detects a fault serious enough to risk catastrophic damage, dangerously low oil pressure, an overheating transmission, a major sensor failure, it deliberately restricts power, sometimes locking the transmission into one gear. It feels like the car dying. It is, in fact, the opposite. A deliberate sacrifice of performance in exchange for enough control to reach a shoulder or a shop instead of a total engine loss on the highway. Limp mode is not the failure, it's the car choosing the cheapest possible outcome available to you, the moment before things could get far more expensive. This is precisely the kind of moment that fuels the reputation we broke down last time. A driver who doesn't understand what limp mode is walks away from that experience convinced their BMW is falling apart, and repeats that story for years. The engineering behind it was actually working exactly as intended. Compare that outcome to the alternative universe where limp mode doesn't exist at all. A transmission running low on fluid pressure just keeps running normally at full load until it fails outright, probably at highway speed, probably without warning, and probably at a cost measured in thousands rather than in an afternoon at a shop. The restricted power isn't the disaster, it's the mechanism that prevents one. 5. The system's managing the car's own memory. Here's a strange question. Can you accidentally sabotage your own BMW just by fixing it wrong? Yes. And thousands of owners have without ever realizing it. Feature 11, Battery Registration, is the one most likely to cost an unsuspecting owner real money. Modern BMWs track battery age, charge cycles and degradation, and use that data to control charging voltage, replace the battery without registering the new one, and the car keeps calculating based on the old battery's profile, sometimes undercharging a brand new battery because the system still thinks it's already worn out. It's a 5-minute diagnostic procedure that prevents a problem most owners never realize they caused themselves, and a quiet, common contributor to exactly the kind of "my BMW keeps having electrical problems" story that ends up online. It's a near-perfect microcosm of everything this video and the last one have been circling. The car isn't malfunctioning. It's operating exactly as designed, on outdated information because nobody told it anything changed. The failure isn't mechanical. It's a gap in communication between a very literal-minded computer and an owner who assumed a battery was just a battery. Feature 12, the rain sensor mounted behind the mirror, does more than trigger wipers. The same optical sensor that measures water scatter on the windshield frequently feeds automatic headlight activation and humidity-based climate decisions, since heavy rain, low light, and cabin fogging tend to arrive together. One sensor, 3 protective jobs running constantly without ever being named on a spec sheet. And feature 13, driver profile and key memory, turns each key into more than a way to unlock the door. It's an identity token, recalling seat position, mirror angles, climate settings, and drive mode. The instant it's recognized. Built for households sharing one car, it means the vehicle is always ready to feel personally calibrated, regardless of who drove it last. Final act, the car that never takes credit. Go back to the 2 drivers we opened with. The woman who stopped safely in the rain never files a complaint, never posts a video, never even mentions it to her passenger. Nothing happened as far as she's concerned. The man on the shoulder, meanwhile, tells the story for years the day his BMW nearly stranded him, the moment he almost lost faith in German engineering entirely. Here's the part that should unsettle you. Both of them were failed by the exact same thing. Not the car. The car worked flawlessly in both cases. They were failed by information, by never being told what their own vehicle was actually capable of and what it was doing on their behalf in real time. One of them got lucky enough to never need to know. The other paid for that ignorance, in panic, in doubt, and in a story that spread further than the truth ever will. That's the real inheritance of everything we uncovered in the Bavarian paradox. The N63s, the N54s, the timing chains that shattered without warning, those were genuine, expensive, well-earned scars. But layered underneath every one of those failures was also a parallel history of engineering built to prevent exactly that kind of disaster. A water pump fighting heat soak before it starts. A transmission quietly learning to protect itself from its own driver. A brake system finishing a stop before a foot even lands. The flaws and the safeguards were never separate stories. They were the same engineers solving the same problem from 2 different directions at once. Which brings us to feature 14. Not a system you can point to under the hood, but the idea sitting underneath all 13 of the others, invisible engineering. The philosophy that the best safety feature is the one you never have to think about, and the best protection is the kind that never asks for a thank you. So no, this isn't a rebuttal to everything the internet has said about BMW ownership. It's the missing half of the argument. A car this complicated will always punish neglect, and no hidden system changes that arithmetic. But it will also spend every single mile trying to save you from itself, in ways you were never meant to notice, using intelligence you were never told existed. 13 systems, 1 philosophy tying them together, running right now in the driveway, in traffic, in weather you haven't checked yet. Not one of them is waiting for applause. The only thing standing between you and understanding your own car is a menu you've never opened, and a story you were told to believe before you ever got the chance to ask. From all of us here at Bimmer Insider, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.